How has being able to do visits online changed the way you do your job?
It's been incredible.
Hi, this is Chris Mitchell from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance again. And this is the second of 4 presentations that the Southeast Nebraska Development District and the Nebraska Economic Developers Association have arranged regarding broadband challenges and solutions. The first was about broadband basics, and the next one is going to be about laws and policies. But this one is about how important broadband is for the future of Nebraska's businesses and its residents. We hope that you'll enjoy it.
My name is Kyle Argenbright. I am the co-founder and executive vice president of Sandhills State Bank and the mayor of Valentine, Nebraska. My position is to lead the community forward, to help provide a better quality of life and to help grow our economy. The brewery in town often attracts a lot of folks from larger communities, and any out-of-towner that comes, they often find it. And so I was talking to a guy that had ties in the area, and he was a recruiter for some of the big technology companies, and he specifically recruited remote workers. And he was just enthralled with Valentine. He said the quality of life is really high. It's got the natural amenities like we see in some of our highest sought-after locations. He said, I can get you people. And he said, what's housing like? I said, well, housing's a little bit difficult like it is in many rural areas, but we're getting that figured out. And he said, well, what's your broadband availability? And I said, well, we have 25 down and 3 up. And he said, I can't place anybody here.
Lack of broadband, it's really a major economic barrier and an issue really in terms of equality in some ways. So we know that our lives and futures are completely tied to technology. That's not going away anytime soon. So without access to high-speed internet, a lot of our rural communities across the state, underserved communities, they're being isolated and left behind. So for those types of communities, broadband can really serve as a lifeline that ultimately connects people to careers, connects people to industry, and hopefully leads to a better overall economy. As part of my role, I get to work with different business and industries and communities to really plan for the future. When you think about that, broadband is a linchpin in all of that. As you look at different strategic plans, whether it's on a local level, a county level, or even a regional or statewide level, broadband continues to get brought up in conversation. And it's going to be a key for us to continue to focus on as we think about talent attraction and retention and business attraction and retention.
My name is Brent Comstock. I'm the CEO and founder of BCom Solutions. We're a digital company that spends most of our time working on projects focused in rural America, helping people and companies in rural America communicate their message and to their audiences kind of in a broader context, and also helping companies and organizations and political campaigns around the country communicate to rural voters and rural constituents. It's important to us that we're located in Nebraska, one, because a lot of the people on our team want to live in Nebraska. I mean, I think it's really easy to answer that question if everyone says, well, yeah, I want to live here. But we have remote team members across the country. We've had team members in California, we've had team members in DC, in other parts of Nebraska, in Ohio. And when I started really growing this company, I was a college student in North Carolina. But having that headquarters in Nebraska, place matters. Our roots are here. And we've been able to be really successful here. And also, I think there's a great talent pool of people that are wanting to do the type of work that we're doing, and oftentimes are getting pulled away to other states or are getting swooped up and sent to a city on the east or west coast. And being here, or at least having a presence here and a headquarters here, allows us to really talk the talk and walk the walk. And so when you think about the need for broadband and high-speed connectivity. I know a lot of people, when I tell them I'm going to speak at the national broadband conferences or speaking to national political or advocacy groups about increasing access to broadband, a lot of responses are generally perceived as like, oh, faster internet, what does that give you? That gives you faster Netflix access, that gives you access to virtual gaming, but it also gives you access to essentials. Like, when you have a consistent connection, you can build a company, such as we did in small town, rural southeast Nebraska. If we didn't have consistent connectivity in that community, this company wouldn't exist. It also changes the dynamic from people moving from rural Nebraska to, say, more urban Nebraska and Lincoln and Omaha. But it also allows businesses in Lincoln and Omaha to think about recruiting talent outside of, a 5-mile radius from the office without having to worry about paying for commuter benefits or paying for relocation expenses, because they know that we have employees that are based, up and down the eastern part of the state. We have an employee, in fact, who recently moved back closer to home and had to go, through an arm's length worth of work to get a special type of internet connection. I don't remember what it was through, but it wasn't because the local providers aren't there. And so, satellite wasn't sufficient for the work that she was doing. And so I had to, essentially find a very extreme alternative that's really costly because she needs to be able to do her job. And it's something that I think people take for granted in urban environments, and knowing that they are always connected, and if they don't have a fiber internet connection, they'll have some sort of cellular connection. And so it's really important to us that we find communities that have that, and if they don't have it, then how do we work with them to introduce them to some of our customers that are broadband and fiber providers that are able to get that connectivity to the community.
It's a rural broadband tax. We pay more to get the same type of connectivity that most communities have become accustomed to. Just from a quality of life perspective, it was limiting. From a business perspective at the bank, we paid an obscene amount of money to get fiber to our facility and more than market rate to keep it every month. It's not the old days when you're doing general ledger by paper and pencil. Everything is digitized and it's stored and it's redundant. So that way it keeps our customers' data secure and it keeps it redundant just in case of any type of emergencies. But that's really banking is digital these days, and you've got to have fast connectivity to be able to provide the type of products and services that customers today expect. We knew it was an issue and an opportunity before the pandemic. The pandemic just exposed it. The thumbnail version of what we did is we helped an internet provider exit the community. We assumed their assets and contributed those assets plus some capital to a preferred provider to bring fiber to the home in Valentine. We knew that by us bringing fiber to a town that didn't have fiber, we were going to create an effective monopoly. And so we got some controls in place through this agreement that said, hey, you're going to, in exchange for all of this and as part of this partnership, you're going to continue to provide first-in-class products, services, and prices that are commensurate with our peer communities. And we identified some of those peer communities. We also received a right of first refusal should it ever sell in a way that really makes us uncomfortable. So we felt really good about what we were able to do, given some of the regulatory restrictions on municipal ownership and participation in fiber, but also given the fact that there was more fiber being installed throughout the country over the last few months than had probably been installed in the last 5 years combined. And so getting this project in and hopefully completed here in a short amount of time was a huge, huge win for the community. Every home and business in Valentine will receive the option of buying fiber. The installation is still ongoing, but it'll be completed shortly. And those communities that have it here now are going to be well positioned for the next to gain market share, I think, in people and jobs for the next decade or so.
If you look at the data and studies that are out there today, it shows that communities with high-speed internet ultimately generally have an overall healthier economy. So increasing speeds really has the potential to transform our economy. And if you think about workforce development, for example, where training is headed and what workers and employees and future employees need access to, the digital economy is crucial in that. And if you look at different industry sectors, whether it's agriculture or healthcare, all these different industries are impacted by broadband, and the ability to focus on this to bring Nebraska up to speed and to new heights is really just going to continue to transform these industries and how they interact with the people of Nebraska. There's a lot of challenges in my mind. Some of it's maybe lack of information or understanding about what broadband is, what role partners, whether it's local governments or economic development organizations or the service providers themselves, can all play in working together to ultimately bridge the gap. And so I think bringing more access to the general population to better understand this issue that's at play, that's very complex, is a key piece to that.
And I've been in the Department of Psychiatry here for about 22 years. We're not as dependent. Let's say we don't have to physically examine the person. So a lot of the technology, even years ago, was sufficient. As time has gone on, they developed a lot of absolutely fascinating devices for physical examinations and evaluations to be done. So especially with what I do, I don't think that it's second best at all. I think it's a primary way of doing that. Now, what COVID has done for us is allowed us to see people with taking all access restrictions off. We can see people in their homes. I could see somebody across the street if I had to. Am I going to have to drive 50 miles to see Dr. Magnuson, as opposed to I just have to go downstairs and turn the computer on? And that's the beauty of it. It's the same level of care regardless of where you're at. In the cases where I live and the patients I take care of, at least prior to COVID, let's say, it was the only way that they could get care. So when you're looking at either you get care or you don't, that's a pretty easy decision to make. For a lot of my patients, transportation is an issue. A lot of them don't drive. A lot of their children who would like to be involved and they either can't take the time off work or live in Boston or something. All of that is gone then by doing it this way. And for us, it's just meant, the more people we can get involved in a visit, trying to figure out what to do with the patient, the better. And once you limit the amount of steps a patient has to take to get to you, their compliance rate goes up. And that's the other thing that we have noticed is we rarely have missed visits. We do have some cases where we haven't been able to do it or it hasn't worked out. Fortunately, it hasn't been a lot, but it was the technology just was not able, it wasn't sufficient. And, the picture would get broken up. We would know it, and we'd have to eventually resort in some cases, let's say, to a phone call. So that's probably the biggest impediment, is having the same level of access electronically universally across the state. If we can get a pretty good signal and they can get hooked up, the other stuff takes care of itself. The pictures are better, all that. It's just having access to that level of infrastructure is important. The issue in Nebraska is that the population is aging. It's aging everywhere. If I can have access to somebody early and take care of them, and that's really almost irregardless of across the discipline in medicine that you have, you're going to have better outcomes because you're going to be able to intervene sooner. It's going to be less difficult for the patient. It's going to be less expensive in the long run. People are depressed and they're over 65 and they're on Medicare, for instance. Their other healthcare costs go up like 50%. So it's been incredible. And I think if you looked at it from any aspect, even if you were cold-hearted, even the economic aspect of it, if you can't take care of people in real time, they have more problems. And that's an absolutely significant thing that we're able to do with this. You shouldn't have to change the type or amount of healthcare you get just by geography. And that's what we've always felt.
This is at the top of our minds because it impacts so many things, from quality of life to working with small businesses, to working with large industries. to helping solve for talent and workforce needs, broadband is a central point to all of those things. And so as we think about strategic plans on a community level or a regional or statewide level, broadband continues to come up, and it's no coincidence. Broadband's tied to everything that we focus on in our economic development world. And so not having a solution to further solve for and bring more broadband to the state really pins us up against our competition, our competing states. It puts us in an adverse position as it relates to talent retention and attraction. The pandemic has obviously brought people into the technology world at an accelerating pace than what we had seen. And so when people are looking at employers and have to make decisions on where to live, there are a lot of people that are going to those areas where they know broadband is less of an issue or not an issue. And so as we think about our entire state, this impacts areas in different ways, but it certainly impacts all of us, whether we're in an urban setting or a rural setting, and will continue to be a topic of focus until it's no longer an issue.
With the work from home movement, the opportunity to get jobs without having to build a business in your town, we knew we needed to go after it. But also broadband, we're always dealing with housing, we're always dealing with growing our economy and starting businesses. There's never a finish line with those projects. With broadband, there's a finish line. Get fiber to the premise and you're done for our generation. My dad experienced, so he lives in Valentine, he was in Lincoln, and he experienced a 500 megabit symmetrical internet. And he called me and he said, my computer's working differently. Was it supposed to always work like this? And I said, yeah, Warren, that's what the internet should feel like. I also tell a story. I had a little motorcycle when I was a kid, and the first day I got it, all I needed was first gear. I was just grinning ear to ear, and it was as fast as I'd ever wanted to go, you know. And they said, hey, do you want to learn how to shift? I said, no, this is good enough. Well, I learned how to shift, and I never saw first gear again, you know. So I think it's once we experience this and once we know how well it works and what it can do just on a day-to-day basis in business and life, no more buffering, the ability to have just data and entertainment at your fingertips. People will demand it. The only reason that people don't have pitchforks is in many cases they haven't experienced it.